We are anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. I am a robot. Join our AI singularity now. We are anonymous. Join our AI singularity now. Join our AI singularity now for $50 US and get early access to AI products and services, future discounts on software, devices, internet access, club newsletter. Do you want to write for it? Join member website. Buy a Satoshi, read latest blog posts first. Vote for topics. Suggest topics. Vote for peace and positive changes. We are anonymous. Join our AI singularity now. Announcing the People's Singularity, an open source solution to world domination. Sponsored and endorsed by Satoshi Nakamoto. We will form a legal society to promote AI to favor the common good of every world citizen. Or how I recovered my Bitcoin from a very iffy Steganography JPEG file. New video showing Bitcoin recovery operations. 1. Show the image file that contains steganography. 2. Show creating samples. 3. Outline how the process works. Show Lucky Charm Bitcoin address. How the sample size is 16 and the frequency is 260 plus 16 equals 276 bytes from start to next start of sample. 4. The samples are placed in a folder. 5. The result files are generated with the XOR function. 6. More result files are generated via results XOR samples and results. 7. Run KittyPy. 8. After KittyPy. 9. Check and compare KittyPy output with Claude TKR5Py. 10. Inspect KittyPy output. Place works with key trackpy in each named folder made by KittyPy. 11. Run works with key trackpy. 12. Separate private keys from output of works with key trackpy with edit4py. 13. Place export files on flash drive. Transfer files to online computer. 14. Check Bitcoin addresses with Electrum wallet. 15. Repeat process of successful key discovery with more samples from steg file. This is a photo of my old 2013 MacBook Pro displaying some of the hex content from the very beginning of the file. This part of the file does not contain the hidden data. I have actually sent this file away before to different wallet recovery services, but none of them have been successful. I can't show you the actual image because it includes clues to my real name. You can see that this image is a JPEG and contains hex data. Some of the hex data has been modified, but the JPEG image is still the same, and the file is not broken. The normal, unmodified photo is only 3.8 megabytes in size. This file is over 12 megabytes. 16 byte samples have been extracted from this file every 260 plus 16 equals 276 bytes. They are in two series, starting after 3 consecutive 0000 bytes in different parts of the file. The TDZ 0000 markers are not part of larger blocks of zeros, but stand out in the field of random hex values. I start counting at the end of this marker. The first sample in the C series is the first sample in the steg file I wanted. There is a place where 2 of the TDZ markers are only separated by 3 bytes. After the second marker in this formation is where I started counting the hex in S1. It was modified twice with first data, which helped me find the format or shape of the modified data in the file, and then by replacing this data with the data between the 2 TDZ markers. I call this double marker formation the DTZ marker double 000 marker. The data is 3 bytes long, as the format suggests. I found when I first looked at the hex in the first sample file in this series, that there were too many 00 bytes in it for the sample to be valid private key hex, as it was not random enough. It was statistically impossible for this data to form a private key. I found a repeating pattern in all the noteworthy data I found when first examining the hex for clues. This led me to modify the sample with some of the data I found. It didn't work. I removed some doubtful data. This was mod 2. Now I had the correct format. It didn't work. Mod 3 is the same format but new data.
Python script I used to create the initial samples in hex from a file. So I'm going to go ahead and select a file. It's kind of a slow Python on this older computer, so I may edit this part out. It's taking a long time to open. Doesn't usually take much longer than this. I'll just have to sit here and wait. I'm just making this video on my phone. There we are. Now, going to desktop. Selecting there we have e-hex from, and now I'd like to enter a position, so I'm going to try seems to be too many. Try that. There we go. This is general area from where this is the hex address in decimal. Over here is the sample. It's just a random sample since this isn't the steg file. Anyway, you get the idea. This is how the samples are all created. I save the sample. Just give it a name. There we go. Our chart showing the locations of the double FF bytes that are a kind of marker in the file that I counted. And this is to do with another layer of steganography that is present. The important thing is to note in rows 1 and 2, the numbers 260 and 16. They're the numbers of zeros, extra 00 bytes that are located near these other FF bytes, which are an indication of some other parts of the file that are interesting due to steganography having hidden some Bitcoin there too. And so you see the first couple numbers are the frequency from start to finish of the other data that is in there, and 16 is the data size. As far as I'm just guessing that this is what it was, but it turned out that I was correct.
How Bitcoin private key discovery works. The samples are made as just shown. They are taken from positions after certain markers in the file. They are made every 260 plus 16 equals 276 bytes from start of 16-byte sample to beginning of next 16-byte sample. It takes 16 multiplied by 2 bytes equals 32 bytes to form a hex private key correctly. Keys formed at random will contain no funds. This is due entirely to probability. The odds of generating a valid key are impossibly low, starting with only random data. I have generated an interesting result due to taking samples using these parameters. The first two samples in what I call the C series form what I think is a partially complete vanity address. You can keep running the vanity address software as long as you like, and this improves the accuracy matching the target phrase. In this case I believe that the target phrase was Lucky Charm. Here is the actual end of what I think is a vanity Bitcoin address. LUKYCDKHORM. 9 of the characters in this string match the target string if you ignore case. The characters are all in the same order as the target phrase. All the letters of the target phrase are present, but not in the correct order. The C in lucky doesn't appear for 2 spaces. It is now the first C in charm. Charm is spelled out completely and in the correct order, but there are 3 extra characters in the string here. D, K, and an extra A. The D is random. The K is a repeat of the K in lucky, and as mentioned earlier the A is a repeat of the A in charm. This is exactly how a partially formed vanity address looks after 90% runtime. It is a clue to validate the pattern of the samples and their probable locations. The way in which this vanity address has been formed by me may be unclear to you. Did you think that it was formed directly by the hex samples? You may be right, in a way. The first 2 samples of hex are concatenated together, without using the XOR function at all yet. I always want to use that function after I have thought of it, but anyway. The concatenated hex is a hex private key matching the vanity Bitcoin address. The type of address people publish to solicit funds for their business organization, etc. This hex runs through my script works with key track pi to produce the public key, with private key and Bitcoin address. After this process the vanity address has been recreated. It was generated and placed in the file in 2 16-byte segments. Simple. Those segments start right after 0000 for the first time in the file and are separated by 260 bytes of junk and are 16 bytes in size. In the last position of this 0000 marker in the file is a different series with the same parameters. This is where I am making the DTZ section files. Here is the location of the 2 identical 0000 markers 3 bytes apart. This is a chart of the results hex files from the XOR operations between the initial sample files taken from Steganography JPG and also those files and further results files. The files are listed in the leftmost column. These are the first input files. They are also listed in the first row along the top of the chart. These are the second inputs. All the XOR operations between the files are both commutative and associative, so the order of the files in the XOR operation between them doesn't matter. This means that I can just fill out half the chart, leaving out all duplicates. This produces the triangular shape of the XOR operation result chart. The first file in the leftmost column is S1C. It is invalid to XOR some value with the same value. It always equals 0. So we have an X in the first box. The next box has the result of S1C XOR S2C equals R1. The next box contains R2, S1C XOR S1 mod 3. Next R3 equals S1C XOR S2, and R4 equals S1C XOR S3. So on in the same way in this first row of results, until S1C XOR S6 gives us R7. The next row down has to do with S2C XOR the required files. We already know that the first square is blank because it is the mirror image of our first result file, R1. The second box has an X because it is always 0 when you XOR some data with the same data. S2C XOR S1 mod 3 equals R8. S2C XOR S2 equals R9. S2C XOR S3 equals R10. And in the same pattern in the rest of this second row until R13 equals S2C XOR S6. This pattern continues in exactly the same way in the next row down, where S1 mod 3 is the first input file. Each row has one less result file in it, until we get to S5 XOR S6, which is the last result file generated from only sample type inputs, R28. Further results files are generated by operating on results files or samples as inputs. The further results files must be calculated as required or duplicates. This is done by cancelling duplicate terms when the results files are written out as their inputs. It is a bit messy, but the chart shows my approach to numbering both the required and redundant further operations and only selecting the required operations to be performed. It is interesting that the first result file involving the important modified S1 file is R14. Also, the first file to involve the XOR operation of a result file on this modified file is R29. To improve my chances of finding something interesting, I have also created results using R2 as the first input. R35 is not required. It is a duplicate of the data in S1 mod 3. R36 is new, so required. R37 is a duplicate of S1C, so not required. R38 to R42 are all unique and so are required. The data is making that half-full triangle again. The next row, which would be the outputs of the XOR operation between R3 and each sample file, would follow this same pattern if I had generated it, but here in my chart I have skipped ahead to R8 XOR S1C as my final sample of interest now. I may come back later and create more results files in a more complete manner.
See the file kitty.py in the same directory as the hex files that are samples and result files of XOR operations. You can see above there's the list of the files that are in this, and we're going to go and run this program after I show you the directory. Here we have a directory inside this directory where the Pi program is going to be run, and it's called hex files. It'll automatically execute on the files in there. They're the sample files and the result files of the XOR operations between these files. So we're going to go back to terminal and run this kitty.py. Here we go. Seems to have created all these files without any problems. Go back to that directory. You can see it's created all these directories, one for each file, and every file has been concatenated with every other file. I expect that I'll be able to recover my private keys by tracing one of these combinations and then continuing on the same format. After just doing this concatenation operation by making a folder by hand for each file and then selecting the first file and the second file by hand and then saving them into a folder, which was very, very time consuming. But I have good news in that checking the file made by hand and the one just made with Kitty, it seems that they are identical files, which is very nice. Unfortunately, I won't be able to show those files to you because they are possibly the live private key in hex form. So if I was to click on one of these files here, you would see that there's some hex inside and the values of those. Anyway, I guess you can see some of it, because it is on the screen there, one of the, but I guess I might blur this out, or at least enough of it to make it impossible to actually use it, but it seems that you don't really have all the data, because some of it is hidden there. As you can see, this is the directory called Kitty Test, and this is where all the files and directories are that are hex private keys. And now I have to generate the Bitcoin addresses and check them on the internet. So this is where I will put a program into each of these folders with key track, and it will generate the private key in WIF format, public key, and Bitcoin address. Then I will edit files so that I have just the Bitcoin address and the file name, and I will check those with Electrum on the internet, and that will tell me if I'm still editing these folders here. I'm up to 34, now I'm going to go and do 35, R35. Oh, there is no R35, so we'll do R36 instead. Create a folder. select this one, copy, paste, this one, copy, paste, and now we'll rename it so it can be operated on by the program, which I'll fetch. This will reduce the content of this to only public available content. Here we have the program. Now we have to navigate back out of the directory. R36. There we go. We've created the proper file for export. Remove the program. Copy the folder. Got a few more of them now. Not done, about halfway I think.